where is the iPhone 9? Apple skipped iPhone 9 just like it skipped the 2. But with the 2, it was for a good reason, to make it clear that this version of the iPhone supported 3G. So they went straight from the iPhone to iPhone 3G. But that isn't the only peculiar thing about the iPhone lineup. Even though their flagship device only accounted for 2 to 10% of the smartphone sales in Asia's leading markets, India and China, they still managed to take Apple to $1 trillion, and phones make up more than half of the company's revenue. Apple's fall events have been the stage for the biggest announcements for a decade now. So this fall, we are talking Apple, the $1 trillion company. That's 1 followed by 12 zeros, or roughly 10 of Ambani's Reliance Industries. Apple has made some of the most iconic and innovative devices in personal computing history. And this week, we are looking at the people and the products that made it possible. And it all started with Mac and Steve Jobs' vision of making computing accessible. More accessible, maybe not in price, but in ease of use. This is Mac and Steve, and today's episode is about the Apple iPhone. Apple has had a busy decade. It's a bit different from the previous decades when they were all about computers. After Steve Jobs launched the iPhone in 2007, they dropped computers from their name because they were about more than that now. The phones market has grown rapidly since then, and along with that, Apple. Apple has gone from $100 billion to $1,000 billion in that time. It sold over 1 billion iPhones, and phones are expected to make up 2/3 of Apple's revenue according to CNN. Even while smartphone sales are stagnating, Apple is adjusting by raising the price to keep making the same money it did years ago. For instance, Apple only sold 2/3 as many iPhone X in 2017-18 as it did iPhone 6 in 2014-15, according to Counterpoint Research. Companies like OnePlus, Samsung, and Google may be toughening up their competition in the premium segment, but the iPhone isn't losing out on the money, and that's significant because it made up just 1% of the sales in the fastest growing smartphone market, India. But this doesn't mean Apple isn't keen to sell more in India. They have to import most of the phones they sell, and that makes them even more expensive. Buying an iPhone X in India meant paying $500 more than buying it in the US in early 2018. And with the rupee dropping, even other companies who thrive on budget pricing have had to raise their phones' prices. So instead, Apple has set up assembly units for older phones that have fewer features but cost less than half of the latest phones. And unlike Android smartphones, even iPhone launched in 2013 will get the latest software update, iOS 12, in 2018. That means newer features like augmented reality will be available on phones made 5 years ago. This makes Apple phones last longer, and so does the customers' association with the company. The pricing strategy isn't the only thing they've got going for them. Their decisions like dropping the headphone jack and introducing a notch set industry trends and makes them look like the standard. Their patents for features like multi-touch screens or under-the-screen camera that gives a glimpse into the future keeps us hooked to iPhone in the news. And even Apple's public stand against adding a backdoor to iOS, despite several attempts by the government, only makes the brand more appealing to long-term users worried about their digital privacy. Apple also uses their elaborate keynotes and aesthetic advertising to obsess over the tiny details, like an extra color, notch, dual camera, to make them sound like a bigger deal than they are. Apple isn't just an exemplary technology company that pioneered iconic designs and trends, but also a superiorly effective marketer. Days before an iPhone launch, your newsletters, timelines, and feeds are taken over by Apple News. And while leaks take out the punch from some smartphones, for iPhones, it only makes the pitch land harder. And that's all, folks, for this episode. Not the Mac and Steve series. There are 3 more episodes you can tune into every week on your way to work or back. Just visit Outlook Magazine's YouTube page or search for the playlist Mac and Steve by Outlook on YouTube.